Okay, good evening, everyone. And again, like Ark said, he was in a tight spot, and so am I, between you and T. But I'll not take more than 10 minutes, but I have been asked to share my reflections on all the talks that went about. For a start, I would say that, are we asking too much from you? Please please feel free to share that over there. That is the ask too high, right? Because you are also looking at, you have to answer the questions that why should you be doing this? Why should you be putting so much effort into this? That is something, please feel free. I think CERTEX has really broad shoulders and educators can take criticism well. So please do put that if you feel that the ask is too high. Now, coming to the classroom, it's been a wonderful mix of generic advice, of specific advice, of so many things that come about. So, one thing I was thinking that there is an openness to educators in classroom that you will not even encounter in your homes or families. So, as an educator, if I may say the word, you are the god of the class, because you determine what are the policies in the class. The students have a certain amount of openness to you, which probably even you will not encounter in any other field of operations. So that is perhaps one thing that you can use to your advantage. When you teach, what are you doing? Are you teaching what to think, how to think, or why to think? And this is where I think today's panorama of talks covers all three of them. The why of thinking, the what of thinking, the content itself, and the how of thinking. So, the why of thinking, that why would you be doing what you are doing, right? So, how best you do it is another question, but why should you at all engage in this? For this, I find the answer in Professor Harbola's talk right at the beginning, that when he said, the classroom exposes you to a breadth of perspectives. Where do new ideas come from? Do new ideas come from your own perspective, or do they come when you are open to a breadth of perspective? So the feedback may not be immediate, or the real spark may not be immediate, but perhaps if you are a little patient with the classroom, it allows you so many perspectives, a breadth of ideas, a panorama of ideas from which you can have something significant that comes out of it. So his talk was both generic and specific. By generic, it says two things in generic that I would like to mention is looking at the classroom as a dynamic situation, that it is a dynamic encounter where greatly things depend on how you are able to gauge the values of the students that you are involved with, and accordingly pitch to differing values. It is not that you are able to pitch a single or one set of values will cater to all students. You modulate your pitch to reach different segments of students. Then he shared, of course, there was a whole lot of techniques of doing things right. And that, I think, if you would follow his work or the book that he referred to, that will give you a lot of strategies. However, teaching, I think, is an intensely personal exercise. What we are giving you is not a how-to-do list. What we are doing is telling you that how people who enjoy teaching, what is their inside story. You have to create your inside story. You cannot replicate their inside story, because teaching is intensely personal. Now that a lot of information is available out there on the internet, why should somebody come to the classroom? And that is where, because teaching is personal, because that is where you connect. And that reward is something you yield from the process itself, and that is what makes classrooms worthwhile and perhaps will continue to be so. Then I must thank Professor Kuber for a wonderful delineation of how grade scope works. Whenever we have, it in fact does justice to when the CERTEX charter writes that technologically advanced stuff, that we are also doing research backed and technologically advanced, that is a paradigm case of it. So every time when we deal with a new technology, the initial hiccups often become the barrier. So somebody who has taken the pain to go ahead and look at and handhold us into this process, so those initial hiccups are taken care of. So I think that was a wonderful way of looking at it and seeing from the number of people who changed the grade patterns and the interaction that came about. That is I think that's a successful way of introducing Gradescope, and it has entered all your lives, not just your computers. About the talk of Professor Verma, when he talks about teaching helps us to get better at what we teach. And the key takeaway from his talk also I take is that educators bring to the table dynamic interaction. And that is what distinguishes classrooms from any other mode of learning. So if we are not doing dynamic interactions, we are probably missing out on what the ethos or spirit of the classroom is. Of course, there were many, again, a lot of theories discussed that you can go back to make sense of the story of teaching that you want to author for yourself. And the parting crucial point that I thought he made was that the teacher, learner, and the process, all three of them are equally important wheels of the journey. So it is also the process, not just the teacher and learner. So it is this process part where we think a little exposure to the stories of others can help you refine your own process. Professor Upadhyay started with addressing and recognizing the role of technical staff in education. That is so important. That jugaad that we very condescendingly use is really not as deserves much more respect than we give, because the buck stops with them. If the experiment is not working, you go to the technical staff and they get it working. So that is what is wisdom. In fact, I would read in him that when he talked about making a difference between the teacher and the professor, as the professor is the one who lives the subject, is, I would say, he is using the Indian equivalent of what it is to be a guru. Because the guru does not confine himself or herself to a particular area, but wherever, whatever the student triggers, the guru can take on from there. So probably that is a wonderful stage to be, where you take on from wherever the student, and that comes from an amount of mastery that one reaches. What is also important, I think, that of the many things that he mentioned is knowing the big picture, the why question, that why are we doing what we are doing? So even if you are putting your energies and time into it, why are you doing it? If you are taking a course, why are you doing that? What role that particular course or lab session or that little chunk plays in the big picture? It always helps. As human beings, these questions are unavoidable. I think another thing that I take, that as a good educator, you have to create a safe space for asking dumb questions. If people are not asking dumb questions in your class, or you don't feel you feel insecure to ask dumb questions in a class, that class is not going well. So let's have that, create that space to experience that. And of course, Professor Soumya Sharma ran us through so many case studies that, and now I look at classrooms with much more fear that, oh my God, if these are the questions that come to me, how am I going to deal with that? So it was like a worst case scenario analysis, but that there can be a mediated thinking to respond to this. The fact that she addressed in literature, that studies have established that there is a gendered, an unhappy gendered prevalence in the Indian education system, is something that just talks like these bring it to our notice, that something that we could be practicing without ever knowing. So perhaps that is a takeaway that we could take out. And so with this, I will invite you all to answer the question to yourselves, that why are you doing it? The hows and the whats are, of course, there with you. But if you have a why of your tasks at hand, I think it will help you make your own story of teaching go ahead. And now I think we can break for tea, right? Okay, thank you very much.